All right, good morning, ladies. It is Thursday, March 27th. We're still reading To Kill a Mockingbird. We're still on chapter 16. This is part 2 of chapter 16. I'm going to read to the end for you, and then I'll have some instructions at the end of the video, okay? So we left off at the bottom of page 182 about Jem talking about the drinking from the brown paper bag, okay? Bottom of page 182, very last line. Jem giggled. He's got a Coca-Cola bottle filled with whiskey in there. That's so as not to upset the ladies. You'll see him sip it all afternoon. He'll step out for a while and fill it back up. Why is he sitting with the colored folks? He always does. He likes them better. He likes us, I reckon. Lives by himself way down near the county line. He's got a colored woman and all sorts of mixed chillin'. Show you some of 'em if we see 'em. He doesn't look like trash, said Dill. He's not. He owns all one side of the riverbank down there, and he's from a real old family to boot. Then why does he do like that? That's just his way, said Jem. They say he never got over his wedding. He was supposed to marry one of the spender ladies, I think. They were going to have a huge wedding, but they didn't. After the rehearsal, the bride went upstairs and blew her head off. Shotgun. She pulled the trigger with her toes. Did they ever know why? No, said Jem. Nobody ever knew quite why, but Mr. Dolphus. They said it was because she found out about his colored woman. He reckoned he could keep her and get married, too. He's been sort of drunk ever since. You know, though, he's real good to those chillin'. Jem, I asked, what's a mixed child? Half white, half colored. You've seen him, Scout. You know that red, kinky-headed one that delivers from the drugstore. He's half white. They're real sad. Sad? How come? They don't belong anywhere. Colored folks won't have them because they're half white. White folks won't have them because they're colored. So they're just in-betweens, don't belong anywhere. But Mr. Dolphus now, they say he shipped 2 of his up north. They don't mind him up north. Yonder's one of them. Okay, guys, we don't talk like this now. We don't think like this now, right? We need to remember that this is happening in the early part of the 20th century and that she's writing in the 1960s, right? So Harper Lee is giving us a more compassionate perspective, one that the 1960s could tolerate, talking about a time that was 40 years before. So this stuff grates on us because it's wrong, but Harper Lee is pointing out in her own way, in her own time, that it's wrong. And through the eyes of the children, right? These children see that there's something wrong in all of this, but they are just learning about it and just putting a name to it, right? So if it offends you, if it bristles against you, it's kind of supposed to. But please understand that Harper Lee is trying to change that in her story, right? Trying to change people's perspectives. Harper Lee's dealing with more with Aunt Alexandra types, right? Hoping that we can get to Atticus and eventually to Scout. Okay? All right, bottom of page 183. A small boy clutching a Negro woman's hand walked toward us. He looked all Negro to me. He was rich chocolate, with flaring nostrils and beautiful teeth. Sometimes he would skip happily, and the Negro woman tugged his hand to make him stop. Jem waited until they passed us. That's one of the little ones, he said. How can you tell? Asked Dill. He looked black to me. You can sometimes, not unless you know who they are. But he's half Raymond, all right. But how can you tell? I asked. I told you, Scout, you just have to know who they are. Well, how do you know we ain't Negroes? Uncle Jack Finch says we really don't know. He says as far as he can trace back the Finches we ain't. But for all he knows, we might have come straight out of Ethiopia during the Old Testament. Well, if we came out during the Old Testament, it's too long ago to matter. It is. It's too long ago to matter, right? They're showing that these things don't actually matter, that you scratch the surface a little bit and we're all the same. Anyway, middle of page 184. That's what I thought, said Jem, but around here, once you have a drop of Negro blood, that makes you all black. Hey, look! Some invisible signal had made the lunchers on the square rise and scatter bits of newspaper, cellophane, and wrapping paper. Children came to mothers, babies were cradled on hips as men in sweat-stained hats collected their families and herded them through the courthouse doors. In the far corner of the square, the Negroes and Mr. Dolphus Raymond stood up and dusted their breeches. There were few women and children among them, which seemed to dispel the holiday mood. They waited patiently at the doors behind the white families. Let's go in, said Dill. No, we better wait till they get in. Atticus might not like it if he sees us, said Jim. The Macomb County Courthouse was faintly reminiscent of Arlington in one respect. The concrete pillars supporting its south roof were too heavy for their light burden. The pillars were all that remained standing when the original courthouse burned in 1856. Another courthouse was built around them. It is better to say built in spite of them, but for the south porch, the Macomb County Courthouse was early Victorian, presenting an unoffensive vista when seen from the north. From the other side, however, Greek Revival columns clashed with a big 19th century clock tower housing a rusty, unreliable instrument, a view indicating a people determined to preserve every physical scrap of the past. To reach the courtroom on the second floor, one passed sundry sunless county cubbyholes: the tax assessor, the tax collector, the county clerk, the county solicitor, the circuit judge, the judge of probate, lived in cool, dim hutches that smelled of decaying record books, mingled with old, damp cement and stale urine. It was necessary to turn on the lights in the daytime. There was always a film of dust on the rough floorboards. The inhabitants of these offices were creatures of their environment, little gray-faced men. They seemed untouched by wind or sun. We knew there was a crowd, but we had not bargained for the multitudes in the first-floor hallway. I got separated from Jem and Dill, but made my way toward the wall by the stairwell, knowing Jem would come for me eventually. I found myself in the middle of the Idlers Club and made myself as unobtrusive as possible. This was a group of white-shirted, khaki-trousered, suspendered old men who had spent their lives doing nothing and passed their twilight days doing the same, on pine benches under the live oaks on the square. Attentive critics of courthouse business, Atticus said they knew as much law as the Chief Justice, from long years of observation. Normally, they were the court's only spectators, but today they seemed resentful of the interruption to their comfortable routine. When they spoke, their voices sounded casually important. The conversation was about my father. "Thinks he knows what he's doing," one said. "Oh, now I wouldn't say that," said another. "Atticus Finch is a deep reader, a mighty deep reader. He reads all right. That's all he does," the club snickered. "Let me tell you something now, Billy," a third said. "You know the court appointed him to defend this nigger." "Yeah, but Atticus aims to defend him. That's what I don't like about it." This was news. News that put a different light on things. Atticus had to, whether he wanted to or not. I thought it odd that he hadn't said anything to us about it. We could have used it many times in defending him and ourselves. He had to. That's why he was doing it. Equaled fewer fights and less fussing. But that didn't explain the town's attitude. The court appointed Atticus to defend him. Atticus aimed to defend him. That's what they didn't like about it. It was confusing. The Negroes, having waited for the white people to go upstairs, began to come in. "Whoa, now, just a minute," said a club member, holding up his walking stick. "Just don't start up them there stairs yet a while." The club began its stiff-jointed climb and ran into Dill and Jem on their way down, looking for me. They squeezed past, and Jem called, "Scout, come on, there ain't a seat left. We'll have to stand up." "Look at there now," he said irritably as the black people surged upstairs. The old men ahead of them would take most of the standing room. We were out of luck, and it was all my fault, Jem informed me. We stood miserably by the wall. "Can't you all get in?" Reverend Sykes was looking down at us, black hat in hand. "Hi, Reverend," said Jem. "Nah, Scout here messed us up." "Well, let's see what we can do." Reverend Sykes edged his way upstairs. In a few moments he was back. "There's not a seat downstairs. You all reckon it'll be all right if you all came up to the balcony with me?" "Gosh, yes," said Jem. Happily we sped up ahead of Reverend Sykes to the courtroom floor. There we went up a covered staircase and waited at the door. Reverend Sykes came puffing behind us and steered us gently through the black people in the balcony. 4 Negroes rose and gave us their front row seats. It's so beautiful. Okay. The colored balcony ran along 3 walls of the courtroom like a second-story veranda, and from it we could see everything. Okay, in these days, there's segregation going on, so blacks aren't allowed to sit with whites, and whites get the good seats, and blacks get the bad seats, right? They even did this in churches, even Catholic churches. In any event, It sounds like the balcony would be a good seat, but you're not up close to the action. And plus, in a world with no AC in the South, it would get really stuffy and terribly uncomfortable. So you need to be able to see this in your mind's eye like a stage, right? With the benches and the more up close seats and better views on the floor of the courtroom where the action is, and then high up above, crowded together where the blacks, African Americans, get to sit, and far fewer seats as well for them. Okay. Top of page 187. The jury sat to the left, under the long windows. Sunburned, lanky, they seemed to be all farmers, but this was natural. Townsfolk rarely sat on juries. They were either struck or excused. One or two of the jury looked vaguely like a dressed-up Cunningham. At this stage, they sat straight and alert. Never any African Americans on a jury. You know that, right? It's all white men. We're the only ones who are allowed to be on a jury at this time, in this place. The circuit solicitor and another man, Atticus and Tom Robinson, sat at tables with their backs to us. There was a brown book and some yellow tablets on the solicitor's table. Atticus's was bare. Just inside the railing that divided the spectators from the court, the witnesses sat on cowhide-bottomed chairs. Their backs were to us. Judge Taylor was on the bench, looking like a sleepy old shark, his pilot fish riding rapidly below in front of him. Judge Taylor looked like most judges I had ever seen. Amiable, white-haired, slightly ruddy-faced, he was a man who ran his court with an alarming informality. He sometimes propped his feet up. He often cleaned his fingernails with his pocket knife. In long equity hearings, especially after dinner, he gave the impression of dozing, an impression dispelled forever when one lawyer once deliberately pushed a pile of books to the floor in a desperate attempt to wake him up. Without opening his eyes, Judge Taylor murmured, "Mr. Whitley, do that again, and it'll cost you $100. He was a man learned in the law, and although he seemed to take his job casually, in reality he kept a firm grip on any proceedings that came before him. Only once was Judge Taylor ever seen at a dead standstill in open court, and the Cunninghams stopped him. Old Sarum, their stamping grounds, was populated by two families separate and apart in the beginning, but unfortunately bearing the same name. You need to make sure to look at your text at this part, okay? Because it's just a very slight difference in spelling. The Cunninghams married the Conninghams until the spelling of the names was academic. Academic until a Cunningham disputed a Conningham over land titles and took to the law. During a controversy of this character, James Cunningham testified that his mother spelled it out Cunningham on deeds and things, but she was really a Conningham. She was an uncertain speller, a seldom reader, and was given to looking far away sometimes when she sat on the front gallery in the evening. After 9 hours of listening to the eccentricities of Old Sarum's inhabitants, Judge Taylor threw the case out of court. When asked upon what grounds, Judge Taylor said, "Champertus convenance," and declared he hoped to God the litigants were satisfied by each having had their public say. They were. That was all they had wanted in the first place. Judge Taylor had one interesting habit. He permitted smoking in his courtroom, but did not himself indulge. Sometimes, if one was lucky, one had the privilege of watching him put a long, dry cigar into his mouth and munch it slowly up. Bit by bit, the dead cigar would disappear, to reappear some hours later as a flat, slick mess, its essence extracted and mingled with Judge Taylor's digestive juices. I once asked Atticus how Mrs. Taylor stood to kiss him, but Atticus said they didn't kiss much. The witness stand was to the right of Judge Taylor, and when we got to our seats, Mr. Heck Tate was already on it. Thus ends Chapter 16. I'm going to send you instructions. I'm trying to learn how to do this Jupiter pod thing. I'm going to put this video in there and have you take like a brief quiz, not a hard quiz, just to make sure that that you watch the video. And then we'll go from there, because I'm learning as you're learning as well. I have enough grades for you guys, plenty of grades, to be getting on with for the end of the quarter. So I just want us to keep up with the book, and you guys are all doing really well in class. So if you have any questions, please email me, or you can even text me. And I miss you, and I hope to talk to you soon, okay? God bless you guys. Bye-bye.